The scream of cattle tore Isaac's shepherd from sleep, and he was out of bed with his rifle in hand before his eyes had fully adjusted to the darkness. Through the window of his small farmhouse, he could see shadows moving among his herd, shapes too large and too swift to be wolves or bears, and the sound that followed a roar that seemed to shake the very earth confirmed his worst fear. Raiders had come for his livestock, and they had brought something monstrous with them. He burst through the door into the cool night air, his breath misting before him as he ran toward the pasture where his cattle were penned. The moon hung low and full, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow, and what he saw made his blood run cold. 3 men on horseback were circling the fence line, torches held high, while someone massive stood between them and the terrified herd. An orc woman, her green skin gleaming with sweat in the torchlight, wielded a crude but effective wooden staff, her movements swift and precise as she drove back one of the riders with a crack that sent his horse rearing. Isaac raised his rifle but hesitated. The orc was defending his cattle, not attacking them. The raiders were human, and they clearly wanted his livestock, but this lone orc stood between them and their prize. He watched as she spun, her dark braid whipping through the air, and struck another rider's horse across the flank, sending it bolting sideways. Her breathing was labored. He could hear it even from this distance, and there was a desperation in her stance that spoke of exhaustion. One of the raiders shouted something Isaac could not make out, and the 3 of them converged on the orc woman at once. She fought with everything she had, her staff a blur of motion, but she was 1 against 3 mounted men, and Isaac saw the moment her strength began to fail. A sword flashed in the moonlight, and though she deflected it, the blow sent her staggering. Another blade came from her blind side, and this one caught her across the shoulder, drawing a cry of pain that cut through the night. Isaac did not think. He fired his rifle into the air, the sharp crack echoing across the valley, and shouted at the top of his lungs. The raiders turned toward him, and in that moment of distraction, the orc woman rallied. She swung her staff with the last of her strength, catching one man across the chest and unseating him from his saddle. The other 2, seeing a farmer with a rifle approaching and their companion on the ground, made a quick calculation and retreated, hauling their fallen comrade up behind one of them and spurring their horses into the darkness. Isaac ran to where the orc woman stood, her staff planted in the ground, her weight leaning heavily upon it. Up close, she was even more imposing than he had thought. She stood well over 6 feet tall, her shoulders broad and muscular, her arms marked with old scars that spoke of a hard life. Her face was striking in an unfamiliar way: high cheekbones, a strong jaw, and 2 small tusks that protruded from her lower lip. Her eyes, dark and deep-set, fixed on him with an intensity that made him stop several paces away. "You defended my herd," Isaac said, keeping his voice calm despite his racing heart. "Why?" The orc woman opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Instead, her eyes rolled back, her knees buckled, and she collapsed forward. Isaac barely managed to catch her, though her weight nearly drove him to the ground. She was unconscious, her breathing shallow, and in the moonlight he could see the deep gash across her shoulder, blood staining her rough leather armor. For a moment, Isaac stood there in the middle of his pasture, holding an unconscious orc woman in his arms, his mind racing through the implications. Orcs were enemies. Orcs were dangerous. Orcs raided human settlements and took what they wanted by force. Everything he had ever been told about them screamed at him to leave her there, to let the night take her, to protect himself and his home. But she had defended his cattle. She had fought off human raiders, taken a blade for his property, and collapsed from the effort. Whatever else she might be, she had earned better than to die in the dirt. Isaac adjusted his grip, hefting her weight more securely, and began the long walk back to his house. She was heavy, far heavier than any human woman he had ever carried, and by the time he reached his door, his arms were trembling with strain. He kicked the door open and carried her inside, laying her on his bed as carefully as he could manage. Her head lolled to the side, and he could see now that she was younger than he had first thought, perhaps no more than 20 summers, though it was hard to tell with orcs. He lit the lamps and set about treating her wound. The cut across her shoulder was deep but clean, and he thanked whatever gods were listening that it had not severed anything vital. He fetched water from the well, heated it over the fire, and cleaned the wound as gently as he could, though she did not stir even when he pressed the cloth to raw flesh. Once it was clean, he stitched it closed with thread meant for mending torn leather, his hands steady despite the strangeness of the situation. When the wound was bandaged, he stepped back and looked at her properly for the first time. She was, he realized with some surprise, beautiful in her own way. Her features were strong and bold, nothing like the soft prettiness prized among human women, but there was a grace to the lines of her face, a quiet dignity even in unconsciousness. Her hands, calloused and scarred, were large but well-shaped, and there was something oddly vulnerable about the way she lay there, so still and silent. Isaac pulled a chair up beside the bed and sat down, his rifle across his lap. He would keep watch through the night, both to make sure the raiders did not return and to be ready if the orc woman woke and proved hostile. But as he sat there in the lamplight, watching her breathe, he could not shake the feeling that something significant had just begun, something that would change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. The night passed slowly. Outside, the cattle settled back into their usual rhythms, the earlier panic forgotten. Inside, Isaac dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound, but the orc woman did not stir. When dawn broke and golden light spilled through the windows, she remained deeply asleep, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. Isaac made himself breakfast, though he found he had little appetite. He kept glancing at the bedroom door, half expecting to hear movement, but there was only silence. He went out to check on the cattle, counting heads and making sure none had been injured in the raid. They were all accounted for, though several still seemed skittish, their eyes rolling white when he approached. He repaired a section of fence that had been damaged and filled the water troughs, his mind elsewhere the entire time. It was mid-morning when he heard a sound from inside the house. He dropped the bucket he was carrying and ran, bursting through the door to find the orc woman sitting up in bed, one hand pressed to her bandaged shoulder, her dark eyes wide and confused. When she saw him, she tensed, her other hand reaching for a weapon that was not there. "Easy," Isaac said, holding up both hands. "You are safe here. You were injured. I brought you inside." The orc woman stared at him, her expression cycling through confusion, suspicion, and finally a wary understanding. "You are." "The farmer," she said, her voice rough and deep, with an unfamiliar accent that turned the words strange in her mouth. "The human with the cattle." "Isaac Shepherd," he said, taking a cautious step closer. "And yes, those were my cattle you saved last night. You fought off 3 raiders to protect them." "Why?" She was silent for a long moment, her eyes never leaving his face. Finally, she said, "I was hungry. I came to take one of your cows, but then the humans came and they had torches and swords and I—" She trailed off, looking down at her hands. "I do not know why I fought them. It would have been easier to leave, but they were going to take everything and I thought it was wrong." Isaac felt something shift in his chest. She had come to steal from him, true, but when it came down to it, she had chosen to defend rather than to take. "What is your name?" he asked. "Grukha," she said. "Of no clan. I was cast out 3 months ago." "Cast out for what?" Her jaw tightened and her small tusks caught the light. "For showing mercy to a human child. My clan was raiding a settlement. There was a girl, maybe 5 summers old. The clan leader said to kill her, that she would grow up to kill orcs. I refused. I took the child to safety instead. For this, I was beaten and exiled." Isaac absorbed this, trying to reconcile the savage monster of human stories with the orc woman sitting in his bed, who had been exiled for saving a child. "You have been alone for 3 months." "Yes, hunting in the wilderness, avoiding both humans and orcs. I am wanted by neither." She looked at him with those deep, dark eyes. "You should not have helped me. If other humans find out, they will call you a traitor." "Let them," Isaac said, surprised by the conviction in his own voice. "You saved my herd. That means something to me." Grukha tilted her head, studying him with open curiosity. "You are strange for a human. Most would have killed me while I slept." "Most orcs would have killed me and taken the cattle," Isaac countered. "I guess we are both strange." The faintest hint of something that might have been a smile touched the corners of her mouth. Then she winced, pressing her hand more firmly to her shoulder. "How bad is it?" "Deep cut but clean. I stitched it closed and bandaged it. You will heal, but you need rest. Several days, at least, before you should be moving around much." Isaac hesitated, then added, "You can stay here, until you are well enough to leave." Grukha looked at him as if he had grown a second head. "Why would you offer that?" "Because you are hurt, and it is partly my fault. You got injured defending my property. The least I can do is give you a place to recover." He met her gaze steadily. "And because I think you are not the monster everyone says orcs are." For a long moment, Grukha said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. "I will stay, but only until I am healed. I do not want to bring trouble to your door." "Too late for that," Isaac said with a wry smile. "I am harboring an exiled orc. I think trouble has already arrived." Grukha snorted, a sound that was almost a laugh. "Yes, I suppose it has." Isaac made her lunch bread and cheese and dried meat. Simple fare but filling, and brought it to her on a wooden tray. She ate with surprising delicacy, taking small bites and chewing thoughtfully. And when she was done, she thanked him with a gravity that suggested such courtesies were not common in her world. Over the next several days, an unusual routine developed. Isaac tended to his farm during the day while Grukha rested in the house, her strength slowly returning. In the evenings, he would sit with her and they would talk, carefully at first, then with increasing openness. She told him about orc culture, about the clans that wandered the mountains and forests, about the harsh code of strength and honor that governed orc life. He told her about his farm, about how he had inherited it from his father, about the loneliness of living on the frontier where neighbors were few and danger was constant. "You not have a mate?" Grukha asked one evening, her directness catching him off guard. "No," Isaac said, feeling his cheeks warm. "There are not many women out here, and those who are tend to prefer men with larger holdings or better prospects. A small farm on the frontier is not much of a prize." Grukha frowned, her tusks prominent in the lamplight. "That is foolish. You are strong. You are kind, you have land and food. Among orcs that would make you a good match." Isaac laughed, though there was little humor in it. "Well, I am not an orc, and human women seem to want different things." "Human women are fools, then," Grukha said flatly. And something in the way she said it made Isaac's heart skip a beat. By the end of the first week, Grukha was able to move around the house, though her shoulder still pained her when she extended her arm too far. She began to help with small tasks, washing dishes, mending clothes, preparing meals. Isaac protested at first, insisting that she should rest, but she silenced him with a look. "I am not a weakling," she said, And I will not be useless. If I am to stay in your home, I will contribute. Her cooking, Isaac discovered, was interesting. Orc cuisine involved a lot of roasted meat and root vegetables, heavily spiced with herbs he did not recognize but which she gathered from the edges of his property. The first meal she made was so spicy it brought tears to his eyes, and she laughed a genuine, deep laugh that transformed her face and adjusted the seasoning for the next one. Humans have soft mouths, she teased, and he found himself laughing with her. It was during the second week that Isaac realized he was growing attracted to her. The realization came one morning when he walked into the house to find her standing by the window, sunlight streaming through her dark hair, her profile strong and lovely against the morning light. His breath caught, and for a moment he could only stare. Then she turned and saw him, and her expression softened in a way that made his chest tighten. "Good morning," she said, and the words were ordinary, but the way she said them was not. "Good morning," Isaac replied, his voice rough. He told himself it was madness. She was an orc. He was human. Their peoples were enemies, and even if they were not, the gulf between them was too wide to bridge. But his heart did not seem to care about logic or reason. All it knew was that when Grukha smiled at him, the loneliness that had been his constant companion for years seemed to fade. If Grukha noticed his growing feelings, she gave no sign. She continued to help around the house, her strength returning more each day. By the end of the second week, she was able to venture outside, and she began to assist with the heavier farm work. She could lift bales of hay that would have taken Isaac significant effort, and she repaired the fence in half the time it would have taken him. "You are very strong," he said, watching her work. "All orcs are strong," she replied, driving a post into the ground with a few powerful strikes of a mallet. "It is necessary for survival. Even orc women," she gave him a sidelong look. "Especially orc women. We must be strong to protect our young and to prove we are worthy of respect. An orc woman who cannot fight is an orc woman who will not live long." Isaac considered this. "Is that why you fought the raiders? Because fighting is what you know." Grukha paused, the mallet held loosely in her hands. "No," she said slowly. "I fought them because it felt right, because I am tired of taking and I wanted to protect something for once." She met his eyes. "I wanted to be more than what my clan said I was." The honesty in her words struck him deeply. "You are more," he said quietly. "You are much more." Grukha looked away, but not before he saw the vulnerability in her expression. The third week brought a cold snap, and with it the first real test of their arrangement. Isaac woke one morning to find frost on the ground and clouds heavy with the promise of snow. He went out to check on the cattle and found Grukha already there, moving among the herd with a practiced eye. "The small one," she said, pointing to a young calf that was shivering in the cold. "She is weak. She will not survive the winter if we do not bring her inside." Isaac followed her gaze and saw that she was right. The calf was thin, its coat patchy, and it stood apart from the others, its head hanging low. He had noticed it before but had hoped it would strengthen with time. "I will fetch a blanket," he said. Together, they wrapped the calf and carried it to the barn where they made a bed of straw and covered it with extra blankets. Grukha knelt beside the small creature, her large hands gentle as she stroked its head. "Will she live?" Isaac asked. "Perhaps, if we keep her warm and fed." Grukha looked up at him. "You care about your animals." "They are my livelihood," Isaac said. "And yes, I care about them. Each one matters." Grukha nodded slowly. "You would be a good father," she said, and then seemed to realize what she had said, because her eyes widened and she turned quickly back to the calf. Isaac felt heat rise in his face, but he did not look away. "Thank you," he said softly. They spent the rest of the day tending to the calf, taking turns sitting with it, coaxing it to drink warm milk. By evening, the small creature seemed stronger, and when it finally stood on shaky legs and bleated softly, Grukha's face lit up with such joy that Isaac felt his heart might burst. That night, as they sat by the fire, the wind howling outside, Isaac found himself speaking before he could think better of it. "Grukha, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, her expression curious. "What is it?" He faltered, searching for the right words. "I am glad you stayed. These past 3 weeks, having you here, it has been the best 3 weeks I have had in a long time, maybe ever." Grukha was very still. "Isaac," she said, and hearing his name in her deep voice sent a shiver through him. "You know what I am. You know that I can never truly belong in your world. When I am healed, I will have to leave." "Why?" the word burst from him. "Why do you have to leave? You could stay here, you could—" "I could what?" Grukha interrupted, her voice sharp. "Be your servant, your curiosity. The orc woman you keep hidden away so your human neighbors do not see." She stood abruptly, her hands clenched at her sides. "I am already an exile from my own people. I will not be a shameful secret among yours." Isaac stood as well, his own frustration rising. "I would never ask you to be a secret. I do not care what the neighbors think. I care about you, Grukha. I care about you more than I have ever cared about anyone." The words hung in the air between them. Grukha stared at him, her eyes wide, her expression a tumult of emotions Isaac could not read. "You do not know what you are saying," she whispered. "I know exactly what I am saying." He took a step toward her. "I am saying that you matter to me, that these weeks with you have shown me what my life was missing. I am saying that when I think about you leaving, it feels like someone is tearing my heart out." Grukha shook her head, but there were tears in her eyes. "It cannot be, Isaac. We are too different. The world will not allow it." "Then the world can go to hell," Isaac said fiercely. "I am not asking you to be anything other than what you are. I am asking you to stay because I cannot imagine my life without you in it anymore." For a long moment they stood there, the fire crackling behind them, the wind rattling the windows. Then Grukha moved, closing the distance between them in 2 quick strides. And before Isaac could react, she cupped his face in her large, calloused hands and kissed him. It was clumsy at first, her tusks making the angle awkward, but then they adjusted, and it was like nothing Isaac had ever experienced. She tasted of the spiced tea they had drunk with dinner, and her lips were surprisingly soft, and when she pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "I care for you too," Grukha said, her voice shaking. "I have tried not to. I have told myself it is foolish, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, I feel like I am home." Isaac felt tears prick his own eyes. He wrapped his arms around her and she held him, her strength surrounding him. And for the first time in his life, he felt completely safe and completely seen. They did not speak of the future that night. They simply held each other, and when they finally pulled apart, they sat together by the fire until the logs burned down to embers, her head resting on his shoulder, his hand clasped in hers. The next morning brought the first snow, soft flakes drifting down from a pale sky. Isaac woke to find Grukha already up, standing outside and staring at the falling snow with an expression of wonder. "We do not have much snow in the mountains where my clan lives," she said when he joined her. "It is beautiful." "It is," Isaac agreed, though he was looking at her, not the snow. She turned and caught him staring, and a flush darkened her green cheeks. "You are looking at me strangely." "I am looking at you like a man looks at the woman he loves," Isaac said, the words coming easily now. "Is that strange?" Grukha's breath caught. "You love me." "Yes." He said it simply, without hesitation. "I love you, Grukha. I know it is fast, and I know the world will not understand, but I love you." She closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. "I love you too, Isaac Shepherd." I did not think I could love a human, but I was wrong. I love you with everything I am." He kissed her then, there in the falling snow, and it felt like a promise, like a vow. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling, and the world seemed brighter, more alive. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Isaac's life. The snow continued to fall, blanketing the farm in white, and he and Grukha settled into a domestic rhythm that felt natural and right. She taught him orc songs, deep and rhythmic, and he taught her human dances, which she performed with surprising grace despite her size. They cooked together, worked together, and at night they would curl up by the fire, talking until sleep claimed them. The calf they had saved grew stronger under their care, and Grukha named her Snowdrop, for the white blaze on her forehead. She doted on the small creature, and Isaac loved watching her with it, the gentleness in her touch, the soft words she murmured in the orcish language. But their happiness was not to last unchallenged. One morning, as Isaac was chopping wood and Grukha was tending to the cattle, a rider appeared on the road. Isaac recognized him immediately: Thomas Winters, a neighboring farmer who lived several miles to the east. Thomas was a hard man, quick to judge and slow to forgive, and Isaac felt a knot of dread form in his stomach as the man dismounted. "Shepherd," Thomas said by way of greeting, his eyes already scanning the farm. "Heard some strange rumors. Thought I would ride over and see for myself." "Rumors?" Isaac kept his voice neutral, though his heart was pounding. "Rumors about you keeping an orc on your property." Thomas's eyes were sharp. "That true?" Isaac opened his mouth to deny it, but before he could speak, Grukha emerged from the barn, a bucket of water in her hands. She froze when she saw Thomas, and Thomas's face twisted with anger and fear. "It is true," Thomas hissed. "You are harboring a monster. Have you lost your mind, shepherd?" "She is not a monster," Isaac said, moving to stand between Thomas and Grukha. "She saved my herd from raiders. She has been helping me with the farm. She is an orc," Thomas interrupted. "They are killers, thieves, enemies of all decent folk, and you are keeping one like a pet." His hand moved to the knife at his belt. "Step aside, shepherd, I will deal with this." "No," Isaac's voice was hard. "You will not touch her." Thomas stared at him, disbelief warring with fury on his face. "Are you defending it? Good God, man, what has it done to you?" "She has done nothing to me except show me kindness and loyalty," Isaac said, "which is more than I can say for most humans I have met." Thomas's face purpled. "You are a traitor to your own kind. When word of this gets out, and you will be ruined. No one will trade with you, no one will help you. You will be cast out, just like that orc filth you are protecting." "Then so be it," Isaac said. "Now get off my property." For a moment he thought Thomas might attack. The man's hand tightened on his knife, and his eyes flicked between Isaac and Grukha. But then he seemed to think better of it. He spat on the ground, remounted his horse, and rode away without another word. Isaac watched him go, his hands trembling with adrenaline. When he turned, he found Grukha standing very still, her face pale. "He will tell everyone," she said quietly. "You will be shunned because of me." "I do not care," Isaac said, but even as he spoke, he felt the weight of what had just happened settling over him. Thomas was well connected among the frontier farmers. If he spread the word, Isaac's life would become much harder. He might lose access to trade, to supplies, to the minimal community that existed out here. "You should care," Grukha said. She set down the bucket and walked over to him, taking his hands in hers. "Isaac, I cannot let you suffer for my sake. I should leave, now before more damage is done." "No." The word was sharp, final. "You are not leaving, we will face this together." "Isaac, together," he repeated, squeezing her hands. "I chose this, I chose you, and I do not regret it." Grukha searched his face, and whatever she saw there seemed to steady her. She nodded slowly. "Together, then." The consequences of Thomas's visit began almost immediately. 2 days later, another farmer rode by, not to visit but to stare, and Isaac could see the judgment in his eyes. A week after that, Isaac rode to the nearest trading post to purchase supplies, and found that the prices had mysteriously increased, and that the merchant was cold and curt in a way he had never been before. "Word travels fast," the merchant said as Isaac loaded his purchases onto his wagon. "You might want to think about your choices, shepherd, for your own good." Isaac did not respond. He paid, loaded his wagon, and left, feeling the stares of the other patrons on his back. When he returned home and told Grukha what had happened, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I am hurting you. My presence is making your life harder." "My life was empty before you came," Isaac replied. "Harder but full is better than easy and empty." She smiled at that, though it was tinged with sadness. "You are a good man, Isaac Shepherd, too good for this cruel world." "And you are a good woman, Grukha of no clan," he said. "Too good to be alone." They held each other then, drawing strength from one another, and Isaac vowed silently that he would not let the judgment of others drive them apart, but the situation grew worse. Another week passed, and one night Isaac was woken by the sound of shouting. He grabbed his rifle and ran outside to find torches in the distance, moving toward his farm. Grukha was already up, standing at the door with her staff in hand. "How many?" Isaac asked. "5, maybe 6, she said, her voice tight. "They are coming for me." "They are not taking you," Isaac said. He checked his rifle, making sure it was loaded. "Get inside, bar the door, do not come out unless I call for you." "No." Grukha's voice was firm. "I will not hide while you face them alone." "Grukha, no," she repeated. "We are together, remember? That means we face this together." Isaac wanted to argue, but there was no time. The torches were getting closer, and he could make out individual figures now. 6 men on foot, armed with clubs and pitchforks. He recognized Thomas among them and 2 other farmers he had traded with in the past. The group stopped at the edge of Isaac's property, and Thomas stepped forward. "Shepherd," he called, "send out the orc and we will leave you in peace. Keep protecting it and you will suffer the same fate." "There will be no sending out," Isaac called back. "She is under my protection and she stays." "You are making a mistake," Thomas shouted. "That creature is dangerous, it cannot be trusted. We are doing this for your own good." "If you take one step onto my land, I will shoot," Isaac said, raising his rifle. "I am not bluffing, Thomas. Turn around and go home." The men hesitated, whispering among themselves. For a moment, Isaac thought they might actually leave. But then one of them, a younger man Isaac did not know well, shouted, "We outnumber you, shepherd. You cannot shoot all of us." "No," Isaac said, "but I can shoot enough of you that the rest will think twice." Beside him, Grukha raised her staff. "And I can break the bones of any who come within reach," she added, her voice carrying across the distance. "I do not wish to fight you, but I will if I must." The men shifted uneasily. They had come expecting to face one farmer and a lone orc, perhaps thinking Isaac would step aside or that Grukha would flee. But the sight of both of them standing together, armed and ready, gave them pause. Thomas's face twisted with frustration. "This is not over, shepherd," he spat. "You can protect that monster for now, but sooner or later you will pay for your foolishness." "Then I will pay," Isaac said, "but it will not be tonight. Leave. Now." The standoff stretched for another long, tense moment. Then, finally, Thomas turned and gestured to the others. Slowly, reluctantly, they backed away, their torches receding into the darkness. Isaac did not lower his rifle until they were out of sight. Then he let out a shaky breath and turned to Grukha. "Are you all right?" "I should be asking you that," she said. Her hands were trembling on her staff. "They would have hurt you because of me." "They would have tried," Isaac corrected. He set his rifle aside and pulled her into his arms. But they failed. We are still here. We are still together. Grukha buried her face in his shoulder and he felt her shaking. I am afraid, Isaac, she whispered. I am afraid of what they will do to you. I am afraid I am not strong enough to protect you. You do not have to protect me alone, Isaac said, stroking her hair. We protect each other. That is what love means. They stood there for a long time, holding each other under the stars, and when they finally went inside, they did not sleep. Instead, they sat by the fire, talking quietly, making plans for what they would do if the mob returned. But the mob did not return. Days passed, then weeks, and slowly the tension began to ease. The other farmers kept their distance, and Isaac and Grukha settled back into their routine, though they were both more watchful now, more aware of the fragility of their situation. Winter deepened, and with it came a new challenge. The snow piled high, making travel difficult, and supplies began to run low. Isaac had stocked up before the worst of the weather, but he had not counted on supporting 2 people, and by midwinter they were rationing carefully. I can hunt, Grukha offered one evening as they ate a sparse dinner. I know these lands. I can find game even in the snow. Isaac hesitated. He did not like the idea of her going out alone, not with the hostility they had faced, but they needed food. All right, he said finally, but be careful, and if you see anyone, come back immediately. Grukha nodded. The next morning she set out before dawn, her staff in hand and a rough spear Isaac had helped her fashion strapped to her back. She was gone for most of the day, and Isaac spent the hours pacing and worrying, unable to focus on any task for more than a few minutes. When she finally returned, it was evening and she was carrying a large deer across her shoulders. Isaac rushed out to help her, and together they dragged it into the barn. You are amazing, Isaac said, staring at the deer. It was a huge animal, enough to feed them for weeks. Grukha grinned, her tusks prominent. I told you I was a good hunter. They spent the rest of the evening butchering the deer, working side by side in the lamplight. It was hard, messy work, but there was something deeply satisfying about it, something primal and right. When they were done, they had a wealth of meat which they salted and stored carefully. That night, as they cleaned up, Grukha said, I could do this every week. Hunt for us, provide. You already provide, Isaac said. You do so much around the farm, you do not have to prove anything. I know, Grukha said, but I want to feel useful. I want to feel like I am contributing to our life together, our life together. The words sent a thrill through Isaac. You are contributing, he said, more than you know. Grukha smiled, and in that moment, with her face flushed from the cold and exertion, her eyes bright and alive, Isaac thought she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The weeks passed, and slowly, the seasons began to shift. The snow started to melt, revealing the brown earth beneath, and the days grew longer. With the coming of spring, Isaac knew, would come more travelers, more chances for conflict. But he also felt a growing resolve. He and Grukha had weathered the winter together. They had faced down a mob. They had built something real and strong, and he was not going to let anyone take it from him. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, Isaac said, Grukha, I want to ask you something. She turned to him, her expression curious. What is it? Isaac took a deep breath. He had been thinking about this for weeks, turning it over in his mind, and now felt like the right time. I want you to stay. Not just until you are healed, not just until the winter is over. I want you to stay forever. I want us to build a life together, a real life here on this farm. He paused, gathering his courage. I want you to be my wife. Grukha's eyes went wide. Your wife, she breathed. Isaac, you know what that would mean. There is no human priest who would perform such a ceremony, no human community that would accept it. I do not need a priest's blessing, Isaac said. And I do not need the community's acceptance. I need you. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep with you every night. I want to face whatever comes together as partners, as equals, as mates. He took her hands in his. Among orcs, how do two people bind themselves to one another? Grukha was silent for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. Then she said, "Among orcs, a bonding is a promise made before witnesses, sealed with blood and marked by the exchange of gifts." "But Isaac, there are no witnesses here who would honor such a bond. And if we do this, you can never go back to your human world. You will be bound to me in the eyes of the gods, and that is not something that can be undone." "I do not want to go back," Isaac said fiercely. "My world is here with you, and if there are no witnesses who will honor our bond, then we will be our own witnesses. We will make our own promises and we will keep them, and that will be enough." Tears spilled down Grukha's cheeks, and she made no move to wipe them away. "You would do this. You would bind yourself to an exile, to a woman who can never give you the life you deserve." "You are the life I deserve," Isaac said. "You are everything I did not know I needed. So yes, I would do this. I will do this if you will have me." Grukha let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will have you, Isaac Shepherd. I will be your mate, your wife, your partner in all things. I will stand by your side until my last breath." They kissed then, a deep, passionate kiss that tasted of salt and joy, and when they pulled apart, they were both smiling through their tears. The next evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, they held their ceremony. It was simple, just the two of them standing in the pasture, the cattle grazing nearby, but it felt sacred and profound. Grukha spoke the orcish vows, her voice deep and resonant, and Isaac repeated them as best he could, stumbling over the unfamiliar words. Then Isaac spoke human vows, promises of love and loyalty and devotion, and Grukha echoed them, her pronunciation careful and deliberate. They exchanged gifts. Isaac gave Grukha a knife he had forged himself, its blade sharp and true, its handle wrapped in leather. Grukha gave Isaac a pendant carved from bone depicting a cattle surrounded by protective runes. "For luck," she said, "for prosperity, for protection." Finally they cut their palms and clasped hands, their blood mingling. "By this blood we are bound," Grukha intoned. "By this promise we are one. In this life and beyond we are together." "Together," Isaac echoed, and the word felt like a vow, like a benediction. They stood there as the sun sank below the horizon, their hands still clasped, and Isaac felt a sense of completeness he had never known before. He was no longer alone. He was part of something larger, something stronger, something that would endure. That night they consummated their bond, and it was awkward and tender and overwhelming all at once. Afterward, as they lay tangled together, Grukha traced the lines of Isaac's face with her finger and said, "I never thought I would have this. A home, a mate, a future. I thought I was meant to wander alone until I died." "You are not alone," Isaac said, covering her hand with his. "You will never be alone again." The days that followed their bonding were peaceful and happy. Spring came fully, bringing with it warmth and new life. The cattle gave birth to several calves, and Snowdrop, the runt they had saved, grew strong and healthy. Isaac planted crops and Grukha helped, her strength making the work go twice as fast. They worked hard during the day and rested easy at night, their bodies entwined, their hearts content. But peace, Isaac had learned, was always temporary. One morning in late spring, as he was working in the fields, he saw riders approaching. There were more this time, at least a dozen, and at their head rode a man in official-looking clothes, a silver badge glinting on his chest. Isaac's stomach sank. He set down his plow and walked to meet them, Grukha emerging from the house to stand beside him. The riders stopped a few paces away, and the man with the badge dismounted. "Isaac Shepherd?" he asked, his voice formal and cold. "That is me," Isaac said. "I am Marshal Hendricks, appointed by the territorial governor to maintain order on the frontier." The marshal's eyes flicked to Grukha, and his mouth thinned. "I have received multiple complaints about your harboring of a hostile orc on your property. I am here to investigate." "She is not hostile," Isaac said. "She is my wife." A murmur ran through the men behind the marshal. Hendricks's eyes narrowed. "Your wife? You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious," Isaac said. "We were bonded according to orc tradition. She is my mate and she is under my protection." "Orc tradition has no legal standing in human territory," Hendricks said, "and the law is clear. Orcs are considered hostile entities. Providing aid or shelter to one is a crime." "That is a ridiculous law," Isaac said, his anger rising. "She has done nothing wrong. She defended my property from raiders. She has worked alongside me to make this farm productive. She is not a hostile entity." "The law does not care about your personal opinions," Hendricks said. "I have the authority to remove the orc from your property and place her in custody. You can come peacefully or we can take her by force. The choice is yours." Grukha stepped forward, her staff in hand. "I will not be taken," she said, her voice steady. "I have broken no law, I have hurt no one. If you try to take me, I will fight." "Then you will be subdued," Hendricks said, his hand moving to his pistol. "I have a dozen armed men. You cannot win." "Maybe not," Grukha said, "but I can make sure you pay a heavy price." The tension was thick enough to cut. Isaac's mind raced, searching for a way out, but he could see no solution. They were outnumbered and outgunned, and while Grukha was strong, she could not fight a dozen armed men and win. Then, from behind the line of riders, a voice called out, "Hold on just a minute." Isaac turned to see an old man on a mule, riding forward. He was small and wizened, with a long white beard and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore simple, traveling clothes and carried no weapon that Isaac could see. "Who are you?" Hendricks demanded. "Name's Elias Harrow," the old man said. "I am a traveling magistrate, appointed by the territorial governor to settle disputes on the frontier. And unless I am mistaken, you cannot remove this orc without a proper hearing." Hendricks frowned. "The law is clear. The law is complicated," Elias interrupted. "And it includes provisions for special circumstances. This orc has been living peacefully on private property for months. She has not raided, not attacked anyone, and by all accounts she helped defend this man's property. That warrants a hearing, not a summary arrest." "This is not your jurisdiction," Hendricks said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "Actually, it is," Elias said pleasantly. "I have the authority to overrule field marshals in cases where due process is at risk. And this, my friend, is exactly such a case." He turned to Isaac. "I will hear your testimony and hers and make a determination. Does that sound fair?" Isaac did not know who this old man was or why he was helping, but he was not about to look a gift horse in the mouth. "Yes," he said. "That sounds fair." Hendricks looked furious, but he could not argue with a magistrate's authority. "Fine," he spat, "but I will be there to make sure justice is served." Elias smiled. "I would expect nothing less." The hearing was held 3 days later in the barn, which was the only structure large enough to hold everyone who wanted to attend. Word had spread quickly, and farmers from miles around came to watch, some out of curiosity, others out of hostility. Isaac and Grukha sat at one end of the barn, while Elias sat at a table in the center, a thick book of laws open before him. Hendricks and his men stood to one side, and the gathered farmers crowded into every available space. Elias called the hearing to order and began with Isaac. Tell me, in your own words, how this orc came to be on your property." Isaac told the story from the beginning, leaving nothing out. He spoke of the night the raiders came, of how Grukha had fought to defend his herd, of how she had been wounded and he had carried her inside. He spoke of the weeks she had spent recovering, of the work she had done, of the bond they had formed. He spoke of the mob that had come with torches, of the threats they had faced, of the life they were trying to build together. When he was done, Elias turned to Grukha. "And you? What is your account?" Grukha spoke plainly, her voice steady. She told of her exile, of the months she had spent wandering alone, of the desperate hunger that had driven her to Isaac's farm. She told of her decision to fight the raiders, of the strange compulsion she had felt to protect rather than to take. She told of Isaac's kindness, of the home they had made, of the love that had grown between them. "I know I am an orc," she said. "I know my people and his have been enemies. But I have done no harm. I have lived peacefully. I have worked hard. I have loved well. If that is a crime, then I am guilty." The barn was silent when she finished. Elias steepled his fingers and looked at them both for a long moment. Then he said, "I have heard your testimony. Now I will hear from those who oppose this arrangement." Thomas Winters stood immediately. "That orc is a danger," he said. "Today she is peaceful, but tomorrow she might turn on Shepherd or on the rest of us. You cannot trust an orc. It is in their nature to be violent." "And yet," Elias said mildly, "she has lived here for months without incident. She fought to protect property that was not hers, and she was injured in the process. That does not sound like the actions of someone who is inherently violent." "She is manipulating him," Thomas insisted. "Shepherd is a good man, but he is under her influence. She has bewitched him somehow." "I am not bewitched," Isaac said, his voice hard. "I am in love. There is a difference." "Love," Thomas scoffed. "You cannot love a monster." "She is not a monster," Isaac said, rising to his feet. "She is kind and strong and loyal and everything I could ever want in a partner. If you cannot see that, then you are blind." Thomas opened his mouth to retort, but Elias held up a hand. "Enough. I have heard all I need to hear." He closed the book of laws and stood, his expression grave. "It is my determination that this orc, known as Grukha, has not violated any laws of this territory. She has lived peacefully on private property with the consent of the landowner. She has not attacked anyone, has not stolen anything, and has in fact contributed to the defense and maintenance of the property. Therefore, I see no legal grounds for her removal." A collective gasp went through the crowd. Hendricks stepped forward, his face red. "You cannot be serious." "The governor will never. The governor appointed me to make these determinations," Elias said calmly. "And this is my determination. Furthermore, I find that the bond between Isaac Shepherd and Grukha, while unconventional, is a legitimate union under the principles of common law. They have made a commitment to one another, they have lived as partners, and they have conducted themselves with honor. Therefore, I recognize their bond as legally binding." Isaac felt his knees go weak with relief. Beside him, Grukha gripped his hand so tightly he thought his bones might break. Around them, the crowd erupted into noise, some cheering, most shouting in protest. But Elias's voice cut through the chaos. "This hearing is concluded. Anyone who interferes with Isaac Shepherd or his wife will answer to me and through me to the territorial governor. Do I make myself clear?" Slowly, grudgingly, the crowd began to disperse. Thomas shot Isaac a look of pure venom, but he said nothing, simply turned and stalked out of the barn. Hendricks lingered a moment longer, then shook his head and followed. When the barn was finally empty except for Isaac, Grukha, and Elias, the old magistrate smiled. "Well," he said, "that was quite a bit more exciting than I expected." "Thank you," Isaac said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. If you had not come, I did come, Elias said. And I am glad I did. You two remind me that love is stronger than law, and that sometimes the right thing to do is not the easy thing. He looked at Grukha. You are a brave woman, Grukha of no clan. You gave up everything for the sake of what you believed was right. That is no small thing. I gave up my clan, Grukha said, but I gained a home, Elias smiled. Indeed you did. He turned to Isaac. Take care of each other. The world is not always kind to those who are different, but if you stand together, you can weather any storm. We will, Isaac promised. Elias nodded, mounted his mule and rode off into the afternoon sun, leaving Isaac and Grukha alone in the barn. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and then Grukha laughed, a deep, joyous sound that filled the barn. We did it, she said. We actually did it. We did, Isaac agreed, pulling her into his arms. We won. They held each other, laughing and crying, relief and joy washing over them in equal measure. They were safe. They were together. They were home. The months that followed were the best of Isaac's life. With the legal ruling in their favor, the hostility from their neighbors slowly began to fade. Some, like Thomas Winters, would never accept them, but others grudgingly came to respect the couple's determination and hard work. Isaac's farm thrived under their combined efforts, the crops abundant, the herd healthy and growing. Grukha continued to hunt, bringing in game that they traded at the market, and slowly they built a modest prosperity. Word of their story spread, and with it came unexpected visitors. Other exiles, both orc and human, those who did not fit in the worlds they had been born into, began to seek them out. Some stayed for a few days, others for weeks, and Isaac and Grukha welcomed them all. Their small farm became a sort of haven, a place where those who were different could find acceptance and rest. One autumn evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set, Grukha said, I never imagined my life would be like this. Like what? Isaac asked. Happy, she said simply. Peaceful, full of purpose. She turned to him, her dark eyes soft. You gave me that, Isaac. You gave me a reason to keep living. You gave me the same, Isaac said. Before you came, I was just going through the motions. Now, every day feels meaningful. Grukha leaned her head on his shoulder and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the colors of the sky shift and change. In the distance, they could hear the lowing of the cattle, the rustle of the wind through the grass, and somewhere the call of a hawk. Isaac, Grukha said after a while. Yes, I am with child. Isaac froze, his heart skipping a beat. You are. What? Grukha smiled, her hand moving to her stomach. I am carrying your child, our child. For a moment Isaac could not speak. Then, all at once, joy flooded through him, so intense it took his breath away. He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. Are you sure? I am sure, she said. I have known for a few weeks, but I wanted to be certain before I told you. Isaac laughed, a sound of pure happiness, and kissed her over and over until they were both breathless. We are going to be parents, he said, wonder in his voice. We are going to have a baby. A half-orc baby, Grukha said, and there was a note of worry in her voice. Isaac, I do not know what that will mean. I do not know how our child will be received, whether by humans or by orcs. Our child will be loved, Isaac said fiercely. By us, and by anyone with a shred of decency. And if the world does not accept them, then we will carve out a place where they can be themselves, just like we did for ourselves. Grukha's eyes filled with tears, and she nodded. Yes, she said. We will. The pregnancy was not easy. Grukha suffered from sickness in the early months, and as her belly grew, she found it harder to move, harder to work. But Isaac was there every step of the way, taking on extra tasks, tending to her needs, making sure she rested. And Grukha, for her part, bore the discomforts with grace, her hand often resting on her swelling stomach, a look of wonder on her face. Winter came again, and with it, the time of the birth. It happened on a night when the snow was falling thick and fast, the wind howling around the house. Grukha's labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Isaac feared he would lose her. But she was strong, stronger than anyone he had ever known, and as dawn broke, their child came into the world with a lusty cry. Isaac held the baby in his arms, tears streaming down his face. The child was small but healthy, with skin a lighter green than Grukha's, tiny nubs where tusks would one day grow, and the most beautiful eyes Isaac had ever seen. "A son," Grukha said weakly from the bed. "We have a son." "He is perfect," Isaac said, bringing the baby to her. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Ethan, a human name, because Isaac wanted his son to have every chance of acceptance in the world. But they also gave him an Orcish name, Grukthar, which meant strong heart, because Grukha wanted him to remember where he came from. The months after Ethan's birth were exhausting but joyful. He was a healthy baby, loud and hungry and curious, and both Isaac and Grukha doted on him. They took turns rocking him to sleep, feeding him, changing him, and marveling at every tiny thing he did. As Ethan grew, it became clear that he had inherited the best of both his parents. He had Isaac's curiosity and gentleness, and Grukha's strength and determination. He was quick to laugh and slow to anger, and he loved the animals on the farm, following his parents around as soon as he was able to toddle. One day, when Ethan was about 2 years old, a group of orc travelers passed near the farm. Grukha spotted them from a distance and stiffened, old instincts flaring, but Isaac touched her arm gently. "Let us meet them," he said. "Let us show them what is possible." Grukha hesitated, then nodded. Together, with Ethan between them, they walked out to meet the orcs. The travelers were wary at first, their hands on their weapons, but when they saw Grukha and the half-orc child, they paused. "You are orc," one of them said, a large male with scars across his face. "But you live with a human." "I do," Grukha said, her chin lifting. "He is my mate. This is our son." The orcs looked at each other, then at Ethan, who stared back at them with wide, curious eyes. The scarred male crouched down, bringing himself to the child's level. "Strong child," he said. "You are lucky, small one. You have the strength of orcs and the cleverness of humans." Ethan giggled and reached out, touching one of the male's tusks. The orc laughed, a deep, rumbling sound, and stood. He looked at Grukha. "You were cast out, yes?" "Yes," Grukha said. "Perhaps you were cast out," the male said, "or perhaps you found a better way." He glanced at Isaac, then back at Grukha. "The clans are not all the same. Some are changing, learning. What you have done here, it is not without merit." With that, the orcs continued on their way, but the encounter left Grukha thoughtful. "Perhaps," she said to Isaac that night, "the world is changing. Perhaps there is hope for more like us." "There is always hope," Isaac said. "We are proof of that." The years passed, and Ethan grew into a bright, strong boy. He learned to read and write from Isaac, and to hunt and track from Grukha. He was accepted by some of the neighbors' children and shunned by others, but he did not let it bother him. He had his parents' love, and that was enough. Isaac and Grukha's farm continued to prosper. They expanded their holdings, bought more cattle, and even took on a few seasonal workers who did not care about Grukha's heritage as long as they were paid fairly. The little haven they had created grew, and more people, both human and orc, came to see it as a symbol of what could be. One evening, many years after that snowy night when Grukha had collapsed in the pasture, Isaac and Grukha sat on their porch, watching the sunset. Ethan was playing in the yard, now a young man of 18, tall and strong, with his mother's green-tinted skin and his father's warm eyes. He was courting a human girl from a neighboring farm, and she seemed to genuinely care for him, seeing past his mixed heritage to the person he was. "You ever regret it?" Isaac asked Grukha. "Giving up your clan, your people, everything you knew?" Grukha was silent for a moment, then she smiled. "No," she said. "I do not regret it. I gave up one life, but I gained another, a better one. I have you, I have Ethan, I have a home. What more could I want?" Isaac took her hand, their fingers intertwining. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the moment I saw you standing in that pasture, fighting to protect what was mine. I will love you until my last breath." "And I love you," Grukha said. "You saved me, Isaac. Not just my life, but my soul. You showed me that I could be more than what I was born to be. You gave me hope." They sat together as the sun sank below the horizon, the sky turning from gold to pink to deep purple. In the yard, Ethan laughed at something, the sound carrying on the breeze, and Isaac felt a profound sense of contentment. This was his life. This was his family. This was his home. And it was everything he had ever wanted. As the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky, Isaac and Grukha remained on the porch, their hands clasped, their hearts full. They had faced prejudice and danger, hardship and fear, but they had faced it together, and they had won. Not because they were strong, though they were, and not because they were lucky, though perhaps they had been. They had won because they had chosen love over fear, because they had refused to let the world tell them who they could or could not be. And in the end, that choice had made all the difference. The night deepened, and eventually they went inside, closing the door on the cool air. But before they did, Isaac looked back at the land that stretched out before them, at the fields they had planted, the cattle they had raised, the life they had built from nothing. "Thank you," he said quietly, though he was not sure if he was speaking to Grukha or to the gods or to fate itself. Grukha squeezed his hand. "No," she said. "Thank you." And together they stepped into the warmth of their home, into the life they had chosen, into the future they had made. Years continued to unfold with a gentle rhythm. Ethan eventually married the human girl, Anna, and they built their own home on the edge of Isaac and Grukha's property. The union was met with some resistance, but far less than Isaac and Grukha had faced, and it gave them hope that the world was indeed changing, slowly but surely. Grandchildren came, some more human in appearance, others showing more of their orcish heritage, but all loved and welcomed. The farm expanded into something more than just a homestead. It became a community, a place where those who did not fit elsewhere could find belonging. Half-orcs, mixed families, and those with open hearts gathered there, creating a patchwork society that was richer for its diversity. Isaac's hair turned gray, then white, and his steps grew slower. Grukha aged too, though orcs lived longer than humans, and she knew that one day she would face the world without him. But they did not speak of such things often. Instead, they focused on each day, on the small joys and simple pleasures that filled their lives. One spring morning, when Isaac was well into his 70s and Grukha still strong and vital at 50, he woke to find her sitting by the window, looking out at the land they had tended for so many years. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice rough with age. "I am thinking about that night," Grukha said. "The night I collapsed in your pasture. I was so tired, so alone. I thought I would die there, and I did not much care." "And now?" Isaac asked. Grukha turned to him, and her eyes were bright with emotion. "Now I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Collapsing there in your pasture, it brought me to you. It gave me everything." Isaac smiled, though his eyes were damp. "It gave me everything too." They spent that day together, doing the things they loved, walking among the cattle, tending the garden, sitting on the porch and watching their grandchildren play. And when evening came, Isaac felt a weariness settle over him, a bone-deep tiredness that he knew meant his time was drawing short. That night he fell asleep in Grukha's arms, her strong hands holding him gently, her voice murmuring old orcish lullabies. And when the dawn came, he did not wake. Grukha wept, great racking sobs that shook her entire body, and the sound brought Ethan and the others running. They gathered around her, offering comfort, but she barely heard them. All she could feel was the absence, the gaping hole where Isaac had been. They buried him on a hill overlooking the farm beneath an old oak tree. The entire community came to pay their respects, humans and orcs standing side by side, united in their grief and their love for the man who had shown them what was possible. Grukha stood at the graveside long after the others had left, her hand resting on the simple wooden marker they had carved. "You kept your promise," she said quietly. "You loved me until your last breath, and I will love you beyond mine." She lived for many more years, watching over the farm and the community they had built, taking joy in her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. She became a figure of wisdom and strength, someone people came to for advice and guidance. And though she missed Isaac every single day, she knew that their love had been worth every hardship, every struggle. When her own time finally came, decades after Isaac's passing, she lay down in the bed they had shared and closed her eyes. Her last thought was of him, of the human farmer who had carried her inside when she had collapsed, who had given her a home and a heart, and a reason to believe in something better. They buried her beside Isaac, beneath the oak tree, and on her marker they carved both her names Grukha and wife of Isaac's shepherd. The community that had grown from their love continued to thrive, a testament to what could be achieved when people chose understanding over prejudice, when they chose love over hate. And on quiet evenings, when the wind moved through the valley, and the cattle lowed softly in the distance, some said you could hear two voices on the breeze, one deep and resonant, one warm and kind, talking and laughing together, as they had in life, bound now and forever by a love that had transcended every boundary, overcome every obstacle, and created something beautiful and enduring. Their story became legend, told and retold around firesides and at gatherings. The tale of the orc woman who collapsed defending a herd, and the human farmer who carried her inside and gave her not just shelter, but love, acceptance, and a home. It became a story of hope, a reminder that the walls between peoples were not as insurmountable as they seemed, that compassion and courage could bridge any divide. And in that way, Isaac and Grukha's love lived on, not just in their descendants, but in every heart that heard their story and dared to believe that a better world was possible. The seasons turned, as seasons do. Spring brought new life, summer brought abundance, autumn brought harvest, and winter brought rest. And through it all, the farm that Isaac and Grukha had built together continued to stand, a beacon of hope in a world that was slowly, gradually, learning to see past old hatreds and embrace new possibilities. Their legacy was not written in laws or recorded in official histories. It was written in the lives they had touched, in the community they had fostered, in the children and grandchildren who carried forward their example. It was written in every act of kindness between human and orc, in every friendship that crossed the boundaries of species, in every love that refused to be constrained by prejudice. And perhaps that was the greatest gift they had given not just to each other, but to everyone who came after. They had shown that love, real and true and fierce, could conquer anything, that two people from different worlds could build something beautiful together. That home was not a place, but the people you chose to stand beside. Isaac's shepherd and Grukha of no clan had taken a moment of crisis, a collapsed orc woman, a concerned farmer, and transformed it into a lifetime of love and a legacy that would endure for generations. They had proven that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most extraordinary journeys, and that the truest measure of a person's worth is not where they come from, but how they choose to live and who they choose to love. Their story, born on a moonlit night when an exile fought to defend what she had come to steal, had grown into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. It had become a story of redemption and hope, of courage and compassion, of two souls who found in each other everything they had been missing. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Not the struggles they had faced, not the prejudice they had overcome, but the simple, profound truth that they had loved each other well, built a life together, and left the world a better place than they had found it. Their love had been tested by fire and proven unbreakable, and it had created ripples that spread far beyond their small farm, touching lives and changing hearts. As the years flowed into decades and the decades into generations, the farm remained. It changed and grew, adapted and evolved, but at its heart it remained what Isaac and Grukha had made it: a place of welcome, a sanctuary for those who did not fit, a home built on love and sustained by hope. And sometimes, on clear nights when the moon hung full and bright, people would swear they could see two figures standing in the pasture where it had all begun: an orc woman, tall and strong, and a human man, steady and kind, their hands clasped, their faces turned toward each other, their love as real and vibrant as it had been on the day they first chose each other. Because true love, the kind that Isaac and Grukha had shared, does not end with death. It transforms, it endures, it becomes part of the very fabric of the world. And in that way they were together still, would always be together, bound by a love that had changed not just their own lives, but the lives of countless others. Their story was complete, their journey finished, but the impact of what they had built, what they had proven, what they had shown was possible, continued on. In every half-orc child who grew up accepted and loved, in every mixed couple who found the courage to be together, in every community that chose understanding over fear, Isaac and Grukha's legacy lived. They had taken the hand they were dealt: exile and loneliness, prejudice and danger, and they had transformed it into something beautiful. They had created not just a family, but a movement, not just a home, but a haven. And they had done it all by following one simple principle: that love, real and fierce and uncompromising, was worth fighting for, no matter the cost. So their story ended not with sadness, but with triumph. Not with loss, but with legacy. Not with an ending, but with a beginning, the beginning of a new way of seeing, a new way of being, a new world where the old boundaries no longer held, where human and orc could stand side by side, where love could bridge any divide. And it had all started with one simple act of compassion: a farmer carrying a collapsed orc woman inside, choosing mercy over fear, kindness over cruelty. That one moment had set in motion a chain of events that had changed everything, for them and for so many others. In the end, that is what their story taught: that every act of kindness matters, that every choice to love rather than hate ripples outward in ways we cannot predict, that every moment of courage in the face of prejudice chips away at the walls that divide us. Isaac Shepherd and Grukha of no clan had lived that truth, had embodied it, had proven it beyond doubt. And in doing so, they had given the world an invaluable gift: the knowledge that a better future was not just possible, but inevitable, as long as there were people willing to fight for it, to believe in it, to build it one act of love at a time. Their story was done. But the world they had helped create, the seeds they had planted, the hope they had kindled, those things lived on, growing stronger with each passing generation, until the day when what they had dreamed of, what they had worked for, what they had given everything to achieve, finally came to pass. A world where love knew no boundaries, where differences were celebrated rather than feared, where every person, regardless of their heritage, could find acceptance, belonging, and home. That was their legacy. That was their gift. And that was how their love, which had begun in a moonlit pasture with an act of desperate courage and unexpected mercy, ultimately changed the world.